So welcome to this session on math literacy tips and tricks for the Sharp EL-W535. The last session on math literacy for 2022, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, we've got a big plan coming through, some interesting things like break-even analysis. We'll look at balloon repayments, doing some tax, all of that sort of stuff as well. So we're going to use the EL-W535. It's got 422 functions. It was upgraded for the CAPS curriculum, and it is particularly friendly for math literacy. So here are various links that you can use to download free worksheets. So Sharp has got math literacy worksheets from grade 10 to 12. So not the entire syllabus just yet. We are working on it to complete it. Functions on the calculator. You've got your on button, your orange button, which is second function, which activates all of your orange functions. So we'll use it for percentages and for probability. You've got your alpha button, which activates your statistics and your memory keys. You've got mode, and I'll walk through those in a second. Then you've got BS, which stands for backspace, and that means to delete something. You have change, which just changes the way the answers look. And then, of course, you have your equals button, which gives you the solution. Now, we have 4 different modes on the calculator: normal, stat, table, and drill. Normal does things like fractions, integers, probability. It does percentages, which is important for you. We've got statistics, and it does basic stats. It's got a table mode, which is really great to use, for break-even analysis as well. And then, of course, drill for mental maths. So let me show you this great shortcut for your class marks. Here it is here. So on your calculator, what you would do is press your fraction button. At the top, you put whatever you want to convert your marks to. So if we say we have a test out of 60 and we want to convert it to a total out of 100, so we want to work out percentages. At the top, we type in 100. At the bottom, our total for our test is 60. And then we press our right arrow key. We say times, and then we put in our first student's mark, which say is 35. Then we would press equals, and it gives us 58 1/3. And this is where change works, because it changes the way the answer looks. So you can see I've got a recurring function set up. I'll show you how to do that just now. So it gives you 58.3%. For your next student, the next student gets 45 out of 60. So you type in 45, you press equals, and it gives you 75%. Then your next student gets 52, so you just type in 52, and they get 87% if you round it off. So it's really nice and easy. You can do your entire class list like this without running out of space, which is pretty cool, and really quickly, which is a great time saver, especially as a teacher. What's nice is you can also share this with your fellow other maths teachers, or other teachers, not maths teachers. This function does work on any Sharp calculator. It has that constant function. So as I mentioned, you can set it up to display recurring decimals. So to do that, you press setup, press your down arrow key, and choose 5 for recurring decimal, and then just turn it on by pressing 1. Now, when you have a recurring decimal, so let's say 37 divided by 11, right? And if we change that, you can see it gives us the recurring format of that decimal, as well as the full decimal notation to 9 decimal places. So, well, 9 significant figures actually. So there you go. So it's a really nice function for math literacy, especially for grade 10 when they go through recurring decimals. Now, I often get asked, can we change the way that the answer is given? Because when we do a calculation, it always gives us the answer as a fraction or a surge first, and then we have to change it in order to get a decimal. So you can set up your calculator by pressing Setup, choosing 2 for editor, choosing 0 for right view, and then instead your calculator is set to exact. So in other words, it will give you the fraction of the third or the pi answer first. Whereas if we choose 1 for approximate and we then do a decimal calculation, you'll see that it gives you a decimal solution first, but you can still change it to get to the fraction. So it's just 2 different ways of doing it. I'm going to change it back now. So Setup, 2 for editor, 0 for right view, and 0 for exact. Just because otherwise it will confuse you when I do other examples just now. All right, now you can also set up the calculator to help you round off to as many decimal places as we want. Normally we work with 2 decimal places. So to do that, again, we're going to choose Setup. And this time we're going to press 1 for fixed scientific and engineering notation. And we're going to fix, so 0, our number of decimal places to 2. And now you can see on the calculator it gives you, so when I do a calculation like this, you'll see that when I change it to a decimal, it automatically converts it to a decimal, to 2 decimal places and not any more than that. You can also do squares, cubes, and roots on the calculator. So it's very, very easy to do. You can say the shortcut for a square is this button here and equals. Or for example, you can do a cube, which there are 2 options for. So I've lost the shorthand version. So let me just do the long version. You can press your white X button and then type in 3 and equals. And then if you want to do a cube, the short version, which is exactly the same number of button presses, but anyway, so it's just second function and your RCL button. You can see there it says x cubed, and there we go. You can also do the square root of any number just by pressing the square root button, and the cube root, you can say second function and the square root button will give you the cube root, and then you can type in any number. For math lit, that's pretty much as far as you need to go. So there's no point making it any more complicated than that. So I'm going to leave it there. Okay, fractions are great. So I'm going to show you 2 different examples of doing proper fractions. And then I'll do 2 examples of mixed numbers, because there's different ways that you can input them. So the first way is to input your fraction by pressing your fraction button first and then typing in your numerator, pressing down and typing in your denominator. Make sure that you use the right arrow key to exit your denominator before you continue with the sum. Otherwise, it's going to all live in the bottom there, which will give you errors. The second way is to type in your numerator first and then press your fraction key, and then to type in your denominator. And that's just a slightly shorter way of doing things, but you know, use the method that you are most comfortable with as. All right, then you can also do mixed number fractions. So with the mixed number fraction, you would type in your whole number first, press second function and your fraction button, and then fill in your fraction like we did before. You can also press your fraction button and then press your left arrow key to go in front of it, type in the whole number, and then fill in the rest of the fraction. And voila, you can see that it then adds the 2 together and it doesn't multiply it. So just be aware of that, because other calculators multiply when you do that with your fraction. So assume a multiplication. Now, there's a really nice function on the 535 with percentages. So we can do, let me show you the long version, and then I'll show you the short version. So say, for example, we want to add 15% VAT to a price of 120 Rand. So the long version is to say, okay, 120 times 15%, and that gives us 18 Rand, plus 120 gives us a total of 138 Rand, right? Alternatively, the shortcut version is to say 120 plus 15%. I know that feels strange and weird, but it does work. And it is unique to the Sharp calculator. And in fact, all desktop and Sharp calculator models use this method of percentages. So just a heads up on that. It's a really nice way to do percentages. Now you also have memory keys, which are really great. Particularly nice for when they're doing different calculations and they need to add things together. Right, so say for example, we have 16 and we want to save it into our memory key of A. We just say store into A, and then we can say 89 and store that into B. Now, if we want to add the two together, all we would do is say alpha A plus alpha B and equals. Okay, now, if you want to check what's in each individual memory key, you can say recall A, and that will just show you. Alternatively, you can press alpha and 9 for memory. You can see above it in green, it says memory, and press 9 there, and it will list every single key that has a memory in it. Okay, so if it hasn't been saved, it's saved as a 0. So you would overwrite that 0 when you do save something. All right, great. Then, of course, you can also change your comma and decimal place. And to do that, we just press setup. We press our down arrow key and we press 6 for decimal point. And then you can choose between the dots and the comma. And you'll just see now that there's a comma there instead of a dot. So it's just a preference thing, which is really cool. Awesome. Then, of course, you also have, in terms of number notation, 1,000 separators. So if I had just put in a whole bunch of numbers here and press equals, you would see that it breaks it up into sets of 3. And that just makes it easier for students to read, particularly with students who struggle with reading numbers. We can think of one who calls bread pain, but I won't say that. So you can see it's quite nice and easy to read the numbers of the calculator. Are there any questions so far? Are we okay? We're good. Awesome. Okay, let's chat financial maths. So on your calculator, you can actually use the table mode to work through a break-even analysis. So I'm going to pull up both screens so that you can see both. So here our cost equation is 500 plus 20x. So for example, we have to rent equipment. Let's say we're sewing bean bags. Okay, so we rent the sewing machine for 500 Rand a month, and then it costs us 20 Rand per bean bag. Okay, so that's our cost equation. The material, the stuff we put in, etc. Then our profit equation is we sell each bean bag for 40 Rand. So we're making 40 Rand per bean bag. Okay, well, we're making, we should call this the income equation. Anyway, I digress. So we're going to go to table mode by pressing 2. And in our function 1, we're going to put in our cost equation. So 500 plus 20 and x. Okay, and we press equals. In our profit or our income equation, we're going to just fill in 40x in function 2, and then we're going to press equals. And here we'll leave starting step as 0 and 1. Equals, equals, and now we can see. So if I make and sell one bean bag, it's going to cost me 520 Rand, and I make 40 Rand. So altogether, I've actually made a loss of 520 minus 40, so I've made a loss of 480 Rand. If I sell 10 bean bags, it's cost me 700 Rand, but I've now made 400 Rand, so my loss is only at 300 Rand. Let's continue until we find where these two are equal, and that's at 25 bean bags. So 25 bean bags, we've broken even. Okay, in other words, our cost is equal to our income, and now it's not costing us money to create these beanbags. Any money after this now becomes pure profit. So at 26 beanbags, it's cost me 1,020 Rand, but I've made 1,040 Rand. So I've actually got an income of 20 Rand in. And so we can go through and look at that as well. So obviously, if we wanted to make a profit of 1,000 Rand, we'd have to find the difference between the two and how many beanbags it would take us to reach a profit of 1,000 Rand. So I'm just going to scroll through here. What's really great here is your table is unlimited. So you can go for as long as you like and you won't run out of space. So here we can see that if we sell 75 beanbags, we've now made a profit of 1,000 Rand. So it's a really nice way to do break-even analysis practically with your students. You can also use the table mode for tariffs, there were quite a lot of requests for tariffs. So if you want to clear away a function that you've been using on table mode and start again, you just press on twice and that will delete. Let's say, for example, you have a cell phone contract. It costs you 95 cents per minute, and so your cost equation is 95 cents times the number of minutes used. So this would be essentially a pay-as-you-go, right? And then equals. And then you can just clear the second function away by pressing on once, press equals, 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 and now we can see our cost of each equation. Of how many minutes versus how much we spent. So again, you can go and compare the two equations to tariffs, etc., and work from there. We can also teach simple and compound interest on the calculator using table mode. So I'm going to show you the table mode version, and then I'm going to show you the version where you don't need a formula, because in Math Literacy we technically shouldn't be teaching them the formula, even though they learn it in grade 9. Just a thought. But anyway, so say for example you have 1,000 Rand, and we get a simple interest rate of 7% for a change, and we have 7 over 100 to give us the decimal, and then we multiply it by x instead of by an n value. And we press our close brackets, press equals, 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 equals. And now we can see that after 1 year, we've earned 70 Rand. So we've earned 7% of 1,000 Rand. After 2 years, we've earned 140 Rand, or 70 plus 70. So we can see that we've still earned 7% of 1,000 Rand for each additional year that we add to this. Now, let's leave our simple interest in function 1. And in function 2, I'm going to do a compound interest formula with exactly the same values as before. Close your brackets to the power of, that's that y to the x. And then again, I'm going to make an x here. Now, you don't have to press the right arrow key. I'm just pressing it so you can see how pretty the formula looks. Okay, so and then press equals, 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 and now we can compare. So after 1 year, we can see that they both earned 70 Rand. But after 2 years, our compound interest account has earned an extra 4.90 Rand that our simple interest account hasn't. And that's because we're now taking 7% of the previous year's amount and not 7% of the initial amount like we did with simple interest. So we can see as we scroll through the table that our simple interest account is going to grow a lot faster, or exponentially faster, than our simple interest account, because we're taking interest, or adding on interest, basically earning interest on interest, which is pretty cool. So there's all sorts of great ways that you can use this. You can ask your students, okay, when does your compound interest account double the amount in your simple interest account? When do they earn an additional 1,000 Rand? And so on and so forth. So a really nice mechanism for working with simple and compound interest, and an introduction to how it really works. So here we can see at 25 years, our compound interest has literally doubled our simple interest, which is pretty cool. Now, you want to know how to do it in basics. Okay, so for simple interest, it's really easy. What we would say is I have 1,000 Rand and I find 7% of 1,000. So second function 1, and that gives me 70 Rand. Then what I do is I say 1,000 Rand plus 70 Rand and equals, and then I say plus 70 and equals, and I continue like that. So it's creating the same values without counting the number of years, but it is not using the formula. So it's a stepwise calculation. Now, for compound interest, I just want to do this because it will save us time. So what we're going to do is store inside D1 calculator button. So these are just user-defined keys. Therefore, when you want to save a function that requires 2 or more buttons into a dedicated function key, essentially. So we're going to save the percentage function into D1 so that now when I say 1,000 Rand plus 7%, instead of saying second function 1, I can now just press D1 and it will give it to me. Now for compound interest, all we would do is keep saying plus 7%, which is why I did this savings thing, because it will save you a lot of time in terms of button presses and frustration. So plus 7% and 7%. And you can just scroll back up and check how many times you've done that to see your calculations with compound interest as well. Cool. So all the steps are here. I will share this presentation with you hopefully tomorrow or on Monday, so you can just download it. Now, there were a lot of requests for tax as well. So just to go through this very briefly. This is the 2022 table. So it will be outdated for this year. Because since 2022 tax ended in February, but we'll use it. So here are your income per year and how much tax you'd have to pay, and then your primary rebates versus your secondary and tertiary. So the older you are, over 65 and above, you're going to get even better rebates on your tax amount. Okay, so let's say, for example, we're earning 20,000 Rand a month. Okay, so on your calculator, the first step that we need to do, and I'm just going to share both screens with you so that we can follow, is we're going to calculate how much money per year they're now earning. So 20,000 Rand times 12 months in a year gives us 240,000 Rand per year that we've now earned. So this means that it falls in this bracket here, 216 to 337, which means we need to pay 38,916 Rand in tax plus 26% in tax over 216,000. So our first step then is to find the difference of 240 and 216,200. So we're just going to say minus 216,200 and equals, and that gives us a value over and above the 216,000 of 23,800. So now we need to find 26% of 23,800. So we're going to say times 26 and either second function 1 or just use your D1 key, depending on if you saved it. And it gives you an amount of 6,188 Rand. Now we add this tax to our taxable original amount, which is 38,916. And so, oopsie, I shouldn't have done it. Let's say plus 38,916. Here we go. And equals, and that gives us 45,104 Rand. That's how much tax we're going to pay before rebates. Now, if we're young and free, the only rebate we're going to get is for 15,714 Rand. So we're going to subtract this rebate and we're going to say 15,714 and equals, and so the total tax amount that we're going to pay for this year is 29,390 Rand. Now to find our monthly tax rate, we would divide this again by 12, and that gives us 2,400 2,449 Rand and 17 cents. So if he's earning 20,000 Rand, we can then say 20,000 minus, and then we say alpha and equals for answer and equals. And that tells us that he's going to take home, or she's going to take home 17,550 Rand a month. Now, that does only cover the basics. So what happens if you get a bonus, or what about medical aid, or what about pension? So if you get a bonus, what happens is your bonus is added to your monthly amount that you earn. So it goes from 20,000 to 25,000 Rand. And then your tax for that month is calculated as if you were earning 25,000 Rand for the entire year. Okay. So what then happens is that you pay more tax in that month for your bonus, but then you receive it back in a rebate during tax season. How SARS works it out is that you add the extra 5,000 Rand to the 240,000 Rand, and it calculates it as it should, which is your total earnings for the year, which is 245,000 Rand. So you would pay less tax essentially using that method. Okay. What happens with medical aid is that you get a direct rebate. So if you have medical aid and you're paying medical aid, what happens is that your first 2 members on medical aid get a rebate of 332 Rand per month. And then any further members, so if it's mommy, daddy, and 2 children, mommy and daddy get 332 Rand off each. And then the 2 children each get 224 Rand off as a rebate. Okay, so you would just rather calculate that. So normally most people would claim the medical aid back during tax season, and then this calculation would be in effect, and you would get back this. Now you do get more rebates based on what you spent on tax, what you spent on medical costs that weren't covered by your medical aid. So that is also added to the calculation. So that's not the final total that you would get back. But if you didn't spend anything else further and your medical aid covered everything, then that's the total that you would get back. Okay. Now, if you submit or you pay a pension fund, then what happens is that the pension is deducted off your salary, and then your salary or your tax base is then calculated as the amount after your pension fund. So in other words, if you're earning 20,000 Rand a month and you choose to pay 2,000 Rand a month in pension fund, then your new salary or your taxable salary is considered to be 18,000 Rand. So then you would do the whole calculation based on 18,000 Rand per month and not at 20,000. So it does save you in terms of tax to pay pension first, but you will get taxed on that pension later. But as we saw, you do get additional rebates at the age of 65. So that should help towards not getting taxed too badly on your pension if you don't withdraw it before the age of 65. All right, then we have spoken about VAT and percentages, but I do want to show you this very cool thing here. So when we want to calculate the amount before VAT, so when we added VAT, we had 120 plus 15, and we pressed percent or second function 1, and we got 138 Rand. But if I say 138 Rand minus 15%, that doesn't give me 120 Rand, it gives me 117 Rand, because we're taking 15% of 138. So how do we find the amount before tax was added? What we do is we say 138 divided by 115%, and that will give us 120 Rand. So just a heads up on that one. We can also talk through present value annuities, and for this math, let's just see, obviously they don't need to know the formula. They will be given the formula, but they don't need to understand too much of it. It's more of a background calculation. So I'm not going to do it here with you, but I do want to show you the balloon repayments. Okay, so because that came up quite a few times now. So With balloon repayments, what happens is you can choose to finance your car for the full amount, or you can choose to say, okay, I want to take 20% of this capital amount and pay it back at the end of my loan term. Okay, so you can either choose to pay 300,000 Rand off with all of the interest added and the repayments calculated like that, or you can say, okay, I'm going to pay back 240,000 Rand with all of the interest on a 300,000 Rand, and then pay back 60,000 Rand on the last day of my loan. So that's just how a balloon repayment works. So the benefit is you can afford a more expensive car because your repayments will be smaller. Unfortunately, though, you still have to pay the balloon at the end of the finance cycle, finance term. And sometimes the car has lost so much value, especially if you drive it a lot or it's been in an accident, that you actually cannot sell your car or cover the balloon payment by selling your car. And then that becomes a problem. Then you're actually left with a debt that is higher than your car value is. So that's just something to be aware of. Now, you can refinance that balloon repayment on some cars, but not all of them. And then it just costs you additional interest. So in the end, you're actually paying more, even though it feels like in the beginning, you're paying less, but at the end, you're actually paying more. So I spent a lot of time trying to find a formula for balloon repayments. And then I realized that I was making it too complicated for math literacy. But for interest sake, this is the formula that they use to calculate your amount owed. And then, of course, how much you'd owe at the end of your balloon repayment. So I've done all of it very nicely for you. And if you are setting your own tests, you can use this to calculate your balloon repayment as well, or your monthly repayment. So the typical exam question actually gives you the regular way of loaning money for a car versus the balloon repayment. And then, of course, all of those questions that then follow. All right, great. Any questions so far? All right, fantastic. So let's work through some time questions quickly. So on your calculator, you have a DMS button, and that gives us access to quite a lot of different time functions. We can use them for time functions. Even though they're technically meant for geography and degrees, minutes, seconds, the number system that it uses, or the sexagesimal system that it uses, works exactly the same way as time, which is really great. So if you want to convert, say, for example, we have 582 minutes and we want to know how many hours. What we would do is put a 0 in the hours placeholder, press our DMS button, and then type in 582 and just press equals. And then you'll see it gives us 9 hours and 42 minutes. Now we can also press second function and DMS, and it then converts those 9 hours and 42 minutes into a fraction or a decimal for us, if that's what we need. So the other nice thing that you can do is the Susie train station question. So Susie gets on the train at 10 to 11 in the morning, and she gets off at 2:32. So now we have 14 DMS 32 minus, it was 10 to 11, right? So it's 10:50, and then we would say equals, and we'd get 3 hours and 42 minutes that she spent on the train. We can also do a speed, distance, time calculation. So how long does it take me to get somewhere? So if, for example, I travel to Cape Town, it's 1,600 kilometers away, and I do an average speed of 123 kilometers per hour, and I say equals, gives me 13 hours, basically almost 13 hours. So what we'll do is then press second function and DMS, and it will give me 13 hours and 29 seconds. So poor example, but you can see exactly how it works. Awesome. Any questions? We still all good? Great. Okay, let's talk through statistics. So I'm just going to show you the basic statistics. You don't need to do linear regression in math literacy, which is quite helpful. So we're going to press mode and 1 for stats. And here for math lit, we would just press 0 for single dot. Then you just fill in your data in your table by typing in the value and pressing equals after each one. I'm just making up a bunch here. Okay, so let's say, for example, that 19 was actually supposed to be 91. I typed it in wrong. What you would do is highlight the incorrect value using your arrow keys and the little black block, and just on the calculator it's blue, but anyway, type in the new value and press equals, and it will then overwrite that value for you. Okay, when you're done typing in all of your data and you're happy that it's all correct, you can press change. So change just allows you to flick between your data table and your calculation screen. Now, to find all of the information that you need, you would press alpha and 8 and choose 0 for statistics value. And there we go. So our number of observations is 8. We have an average of 65,375. We don't really use standard deviation in Mathlet, so we can ignore that. The sum of x is 523. And our 5-number summary, which is important, is all here and listed for us on the calculator as well. So minimum, quartile 1, median, quartile 3, and maximum, all on the calculator for you. So it makes statistics really easy for your students as well. All right, great. So probability, you do have a very nice function on the calculator. It's actually a random function. It has 4 different random options. So 0 for random is random decimals between 0 and 1 to 3 decimal places. Your dice is exactly like a dice. So it will roll numbers, I say in inverted commas, roll numbers between 1 and 6. You just press your equals button. You'll see all of those values. You have a coin, so we could choose 2 for coin. Instead of heads and tails, it's going to give us 0s and 1s. So that's that one. And then our last one is random integer. And what this one allows you to do is to select between any 2 numbers what you would like random numbers between. So for example, if we were doing the glossary, we could say numbers between 1, and then you would press this x comma y in brackets button and 52 and equals, and then it will give us random numbers for our lottery. So what's fun here to do with students is to get them to actually play the lottery with you. So they all write down their 6 numbers on a piece of paper, and then you ask them to switch their piece of paper with the friend sitting next to them to prevent cheating, hopefully. And then you would then generate the numbers using your either your simulator calculator or your own calculator, and then you can see who actually wins the lottery. It's quite a lot of fun. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that you found this workshop useful. If you are watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel. And of course, if you have any questions, remember to comment them down below.